Welcome to the Crazy Agent Dinner Party.
Nobody helps you. Just
Part group therapy, part inspiration, entirely for real estate agents to dish on this crazy business we're in.
Yeah, actually, my mom would be like, Amanda, I cannot.
Come on in, have a seat at our table. And remember, real estate is crazy, and you don't have to be.
Here are your hostesses with the mostesses. With over 50 years combined in real estate, Coach Konversion Kourtney, and the real estate mom you needed, Amanda, the marketing mama. On today's menu, we're dishing up Market Meltdown, How to Survive in 2025.
I love that rhymes. You know, that's my love language. That and alliteration. Hey, y'all, we are back. We're back for part group therapy, part inspiration, but entirely to help real estate professionals sell more real estate and have way more fun doing it. And who knows fun better than K Swifty, Kourtney. Hi, honey. You're back from China. China. How was China?
I am back from China. Yes.
I
I had a blast in China.
Did you see any real estate while you were there?
It's different. It's different than the United States. There's not a lot of single family homes. It's all flats and compounds and apartments. And so it was really interesting to see how different it was out there. As a group, as a whole, we were very nervous because the whole tariffs thing came up. And it's like, are we going to make it there? Are we going to make it back? So I think this is really just a hot, fun topic. Let's talk about tariffs.
It is a hot fun topic. Let's talk about, and also, I don't know if you guys know this, but China too also has a real estate market slowdown. So we're in the same boat as China. And also, thank God, right? Like, thank God that our leader of the free world and the billionaire tech overlord have stopped their slap fight on Twitter so that that's one less thing we have to be scared about right now. And so now we're going to try to tackle the other thing that's pretty scary, or at least allegedly, according to the headlines, that is tariffs. So how do you think tariffs affect real estate? Do they affect real estate? What are your thoughts, Kourtney?
Well, when we were planning on going out there, tariffs was a really big topic. And it was like, even to the point where they didn't want to bring a big group of like 30 people out there, because who knows what was going to happen with it. As far as the real estate industry, for me personally, I know that tariffs have affected buyers who I have under contract on a new build. And the reason being is because they didn't know what was going to happen, and they're getting material, not a lot, but they're still getting material for the new build. And then it also affects timing on when are we going to be able to close. It's kind of like it is a trickling effect, because it's like the tariffs are a big deal. When are we going to close? Then you have interest rates thrown in there. So it is a trickling effect. And if tariffs play that big of a part in real estate, it may or may not affect us.
Why? Let's talk about that then. I don't really know if they do play that big of a role in real estate. So as far as like the Florida market, it doesn't matter if you're here in Central Florida where Jenny and I live, or if you're in Miami or wherever, you're anywhere from like 30 to 35% of new construction as far as what's on the market. Granted, yes, they do increase, what was the stat, Jenny, that they increased?
7,500 to 10,000 for a new home build.
To buy that new build. Okay, but that's done again based on that fear factor, right? On that, well, they could yada, yada, yada. The reality is only 7% of what they're using actually comes from outside of America, but it's all trickled down because they all have to kind of brace for the pain, right? Or they're bracing for the worst case scenario, which I think is kind of the theme for headlines, and how we as real estate professionals can actually take control of the headlines, because people don't live in headlines, right? Where do they live? They live in actual right, exactly. And so that is what we can do with this market slowdown. Kourtney, you and I both have been around since before the crash. And so to me, this is actually, it's not so much of a crash or a come down. It's more of like we can breathe again. We're finally like able to have a quote unquote normal market. We're finally leveling out inventory. Like for us here in Florida, we haven't had a level inventory in over a decade. And so it's now kind of a nice reprieve because we get to shine our skills and we get to learn things that are like real and not, again, headlines about tariffs ruining everything, because they're really not. I mean, they do if you're buying new construction. Okay, so now you have to educate your consumer on what comes with that new construction in today's market based on that very limited, $10,000 is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but really in the scheme of it, you're also buying a brand new house and So your insurance is going to be lower. Your taxes are going to be way low. So there's some advantages for buying a new house, even if it's higher up there. So
I
thoughts?
think that you brought up a good point with the buyers, because really it's the agent's job to make sure that they don't get caught up in all that. So we've seen, just from the people that I'm talking to that are not in the real estate industry, people saying that they're waiting.
Yeah. Why do you
Buyers are
think?
waiting.
Obviously, the biggest feedback that I get on why buyers are waiting is because of fear, and they also want to wait for the interest rates to come down.
Since 2022, we had, I think, 7 spikes that year where they went way up, and obviously that we were like in the 9s, which is obviously a lot to be afraid of, especially when you're coming from those 2 to 3% rates that we had in the COVID era, like panic, basically. But that was a cushion that really. It was kind of a fake cushion. It was fake rates. I mean, obviously, if you got in there when those rates are low, like, congratulations. But Kourtney, like, what's your opinion? Do you think that we're going to see rates anywhere near the 3s in our lifetime again?
Whew. I mean, I don't know. In our lifetime, I have talked to a lot of people who have been in the industry as long as we have, and they feel like we will see it again in our lifetime. I personally, like, I don't know what to expect, right? Like, it's like, Kourtney, how's the market? How's the market? And people want a generic response. Are the interest rates ever going to drop? I can't give a generic response. And I can't give a generic response on how's the market, because the market from here to in Colorado to Florida is completely different. And then even within Colorado, from Denver to Douglas County to Jefferson County, all the markets are different just within and even the community. And then you even can narrow it down to subdivisions. So I don't think there's a generic answer for that, as if the interest rates are going to decrease. What do you think?
You nailed, first of all, there is no national market. That's what I'm talking about. That's the fear that they're selling. That is a soundbite. That is, yes, it's data, and you know me, I love a good data daddy, but that is completely 100% like for fear, and only fear, because it's not applicable to your specific market. And that's why a robot or AI or whoever at Reventure app that has like 300,000 views on his post about this being like the end of the world for real estate that's just incorrect. They will never, ever, ever replace that hyper local agent, because your data is based on actual reality of what the buyer is there in that market, what homes are actually selling for in that market. It can't be blanket statement. Personally, me, do I think we're going to go to 3%? Absolutely not. We've had, I think since 2015, we've only had 3 cuts between 2015 and 2020. So 3 interest rate reductions from 2015 to 2020. I remember in, I want to say 2019, we had some advertisements out about riding the rate roller coaster. And again, having that multifaceted viewpoint in real estate, we were all going insane. Like, what's the rate now? What's the rate now? It's like 3 o'clock. What is it at 5 o'clock? What's it at 9 o'clock in the morning? It was exciting. Kind of, I felt like we were like on the boiler room or whatever, but it also, I'm actually grateful for, again, like the breath that we get to have and that we get to take in the real estate market now as professionals, because it really does allow us to be just that. And that's why using your hyper local information and not this like nationwide negative Norman situation that's been going on is really your ticket to freedom, as far as, taking control really of the buyers. And so why do buyers typically wait? They're waiting for the rates to drop. Well, statistically, rates only dropped 3 times between 2015 to 2020, and then again twice between 2020 and 22. That was a total fabrication. I don't know, fake news, whatever, but it was very, very low. I don't think we'll see that again. I think it was the only thing that they could do, really. I mean, nobody could leave their house. They had to do something, right? And so I don't think we'll ever see that again. But on the flip side, we have seen similar rates to what we see them right now. Like in 2018, rates were in the 5s and 6s. And with the right buy downs, with the right type of property, with the right credit score, with the right down payment. I mean, rates are so dependent on so many other things other than what the market is. It really is dependent on the specific piece of real estate and who helps them buy that specific piece of real estate. The agent. Yes. So let's start remembering who the F you are, right? That's what you got to do. That's how you deal with this market. And you really look at it as like, how can I help people? How can I be of service to them? Well, I can educate them on, I forget the guy's name. I think it's Nick something. He lives here in Florida too, which is like so disappointing, Nick. But the guy I was talking about earlier with that Reventure app, he's the one that was saying these 20 markets, like metropolitan markets, have reduced their housing prices or whatnot. I think the average reduction in housing prices, you guys are going to die. You're going to die because it's so stupid. But I think the average was 0.12%, right? So I know that we real estate agents are not great with math, but if you have a $400,000 house and you have 0.12% of that is anybody want to chime in?
It's
$480. So that's your house went down $480. Okay, that's basically you went to Ruth's Chris and then you also got some ice cream on the way home. So that is nothing to freak out about. That's really, you're basically at a standstill. You're at a holding pattern. You're at a like I said, a breath. So take a breath and actually take control and start educating your buyers instead of allowing them to. It'd be like if I was walking into my doctor's office and I'm like, you know what, I saw on WebMD that I have the plague. So, and this is why X, Y, and Z. Like, how annoying would that be, right? And so you have the opportunity to say, hey, actually, let me tell you a little bit about yada, yada, yada. And so what in your market, Denver, like you're kind of like me, Kourtney, right? You're like a hoe for real estate. You'll go everywhere. Jenny loves when I say that.
I didn't used to. I really felt strongly about the real estate agent needs to be an expert in that area.
Yeah.
And I've seen more and more now than ever that real estate agents are just taking listings wherever. And yes, we can pull the data, we can pull the information, we can get very specific on the neighborhoods.
Mhm.
I'm also still a firm believer that if you live there, you dine there, you play there, you shop there, you go hiking there, like that is an expert instead of just pulling like data facts in off of the MLS and trying to be an expert.
I do
So
agree.
I like to say like with there we've got an E470 and I like to hug the E470 line and
Mhm.
that's where I do a lot of my business. So Douglas County is one and a lot of the headlines are like the roof is falling, right? Like it's not a buyer's market or it's not a seller's market, it's a buyer's market. People are
Mhm.
giving away things and we're getting a lot of concessions. And
Yeah.
even though it is
Mhm.
still in Douglas County considered a seller's market. Whereas you just go past the highway and you go into Douglas County,
Mhm.
that area is considered a buyer's market. And so we still saw an appreciation. Our average purchase price in Douglas County is 715,000, and we
Damn.
still saw a 2.9 increase within like the last month from May to June. And a lot of
Oh,
people don't know that. They look at just the generic headlines.
right. They're looking at a headline from, again, he pointed out Jacksonville, which again, Jacksonville did have a 4% decrease from last year to this year. But then again, Orlando had a 2.5 to 3% increase. And so it is so specific to where you are selling. And that's really what you have to sell. And I talk about all the time, like when people ask you, how's the market? Well, that really depends on what market they're talking about. So for the real estate agent, it's where you are helping people to buy and sell real estate. For the person that's asking you that, you need to then, as we've said before, follow up with some more questions like, well, are you a buyer or seller? Are you a da 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 da? What is an advantage of having a buyer's market? I can think of a million, but give me like your top three.
Sellers concessions to help with the rates on a
Mhm.
buyer's market, maybe a reduction in the purchase price. Sellers being more flexible on some inclusions.
Yeah.
I got one. You got
What?
more to choose from.
More to
How
choose
Exactly.
often
from.
you have more houses to
Yeah.
choose from?
Right. Which I don't know if sometimes if I love that or hate it. Because then it's like I don't know if I can decide. And so they have all these options and they keep going. And we have definitely some ways to circumvent that as well. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Kourtney. It really is about leveraging basic supply and demand economy, right? Economics. So you have the ability to say, hey, your house has been on the market now for 80 days. And obviously coming off of the heels of even last year, we were at 30 days. And so they're like, wait a second, you can't just post and pray. Nope. You actually have to sell that property. And how I was talking to an agent, we were just at, this is so funny. We were just at the LPT plus rally, and this was a huge topic there, like the market slowdown and how you can do it or whatnot. And so as the marketing mamas, like we will sometimes just sort of, what would you call it? Like workshop their existing listings and see how they can make them, sell them. Cause that's what we're doing. We're selling. Like, I know that we are also genuinely caring about people and making wealth happen and making their dreams happen, but we actually are selling real estate. And so I say you got to use the tankini method, right? Like you gotta showcase the goods, like what's good, really, really shine that out, right? Yeah. Focus on the boobs and legs, of course. Or again, if you think of it like if you went to a restaurant, and don't you love it when you go to a restaurant and the waiter comes over and they're like, let me tell you about the specials today. And then they go on and on and on and on. But the reality is it's just a pork chop. And so you really have to, as from an agent standpoint, you really have to hone in on that salesmanship part of your job. And that includes, even though you are not, if you're working with buyers and not listings per se, you still have to know enough about the houses that you're showing them that you can sell them. You can give them the pork chop, but like on a nice, lovely silver platter, right? Don't you agree?
Well, talking about pork chops, you've got to come to Perry's out in Colorado to get their pork
I'm in. Let's go. I'll be there tonight.
Because it is to die for.
Yum. Yay. Yeah, let's totally do that. But do you do that? Like literally, do you actually vet your listings before you show them to buyers, or do you just show them whatever?
No, absolutely I do. I know exactly what I'm showing them. And when we talk about more homes on the market, if that's a good thing or if it's a bad thing, I mean, you and I were both in the industry back in 2008, and you could just like have 20 houses for sale on the same strip. And even in Florida, where the hurricanes, I saw that, where the hurricanes are, you can have for sale signs every other house. And so is that a good thing? Some buyers think it's a bad thing. They're like, what's wrong with the neighborhood? Everybody's selling.
Yeah.
So it is important to vet the house and just like really know what about the house, what the sellers are offering before bringing in a buyer, and really just matching it to what your buyers are looking for.
100% yes. And then also not showing them just what they sent you, just what they emailed you. You're not an order taker. You actually should like talk to them about what they want, what I call the big three: why, when, and how, and then really hunt for that dog, right? But you brought up a really valid point. I have seen that so much, especially in 2025. Another thing that's deterring buyers from moving forward, at least in Florida, is insurance. I don't know what big insurance, Mr. Allstate or whoever has got going on, but my goodness, the insurance rates in Florida have gone sky high. And then also people are freaking out about the flood areas, the hurricane areas, those types of things. And so that is really difficult to sell against or to highlight, to tankini it. You can't tankini method it, the fact that that entire neighborhood is gone now. That is it's a hard sell or whatnot. But that is
also the insurance agencies, like in Florida, they're leaving the state of Florida. So now we have less choices of insurance carriers because they're not even messing with Florida anymore. You know, so that's something to think about.
I really think that they should do insurance like they do FHA, where they have basically, you know, a very low rate for everyone. And if you need it, they have that bucket that you choose from. But that's a topic for a different day for sure. So how about your seller, your exhausted seller who is so bummed out for having to shine their house every single time somebody wants to come and see it? How do you talk them through? Because it's a difficult thing to have your house on the market, especially if you have pets or kids or anything, like just laundry. Like, you know, it's difficult to make your house show ready on a whim. And so what are some of the tactics that you have offered for your sellers to kind of like just sort of ease them through this process of the longer established time on the market?
I really believe in setting the expectation up front on what it looks like. And then there's no surprises, right? However, continuing to remind them, have check-ins. Every Monday is check-in with the seller. Any showings that we've had, anything we can do different, anything that's going on in the market. So it's very important to set that expectation up front on what they're going to be looking at, and then constantly reminding them, because they do get tired, they do get exhausted. I thought it was interesting. I saw in a real estate mastermind group about charging the agent for a no-show.
Ooh.
And we don't do it in Colorado. Do you guys do that in Florida?
I think that sounds amazing. That sounds great.
Yeah, because the seller, I mean, we didn't have to worry about that, right? Because buyers were lining up at the doors waiting for the home to open up so that they can be in there alone. And now if the seller's getting ready and he are planning the dog, planning the kids, making the beds, raking the carpet.
I love a carpet line. My favorite.
And then the buyer doesn't show up. I think that's,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When I looked at it, I was like, I think that should, it just, for us as real
Mhm.
estate agents, doing the right thing.
Well, I think that's really the key, right? I mean, how many times so I had a very involved seller, let's just call him that. And you know how you can have with certain apps, like we use Showing Time on my team. And so with certain apps, if the seller wants to, they can participate in what's going on with the showing situation. Like they can literally see, when the agent checks in, when they check out, they can get automatic feedback. By the way, I don't recommend automatic feedback. I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But when this agent still never showed up, he was like, hey, it's 5 minutes past or whatever. And so I obviously would reach out to that agent. But so many times I've reached out to agents and it's crickets. It's just zero response when, again, they're like, oh, and then he called me the next day, this one agent, and just said, oh, we were just looking, like we were just seeing like, okay, that would be really great to know, because you actually made an appointment. Like you clicked the button that had this like 30-minute window. And so that happens often, at least here in Florida. Is that something that you see a lot in your area?
Oh, there's a way to click on it just for
I did
agent
explain it to
preview.
you as well.
Um,
Try not to be
and
completely
then,
mean about it, but I'm like, there's a way to do this, so you don't just screw everybody over. Yeah.
but it happens, right? And it's just a matter of working with the seller. Communication, always open communications with the seller, the
Mhm.
other agent. I don't think it's something that we can
Right.
prevent. And then I also think that you did the right
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. You have to always and that's the other thing too. If you are texting back and forth with an agent and it goes in any way haywire and it's more than I don't know, 4 back and forth texts, pick up the phone, like actually reach out and talk to somebody, because we are colleagues, right? I believe that we're colleagues above competitors. And so you have to you want to make deals happen, especially in a market like this where people are slow to freaking put the ink to the paper, right? You really have to say, how can we make this work? It's almost like, maybe it's just apropos to me, dealing with your co-parent, right? You have to be like, all right, we're all just going to get along here. You just really do. You have to be professional. You have to take your emotion out of it. And if you want to sell some pork chops, you got to freaking work. Like that's
everyone has the same goal. Everyone wants to sell
houses,
have a transaction.
houses. Exactly. Because if you don't, then what are you doing? You're not really selling real estate. You're dreaming about selling real estate. And so to me, in order to have, at least one closing a month, to me, I feel like you need to have at least, it doesn't have to happen all in the same month. I mean, real estate is seasonal, it's cyclical. You got to give yourself a break. If you have like a kind of a slow January, February, you can kind of make up for it in the other months. But if you look at like through the year, your average, based on whatever your goals are, if you're not selling regularly, then what are you really doing? I really
really wanted to go into, when we were talking about listing agents, the whole there's this big push to get the seller, get the listing, achieve it. But then afterwards, because of that whole COVID thing where things were easy to sell a home, now then they're not doing the work to actually close the deal. All the things in between winning the listing and then the closing table.
Yeah,
I feel like we see a lot of that with the agents that we deal with. Don't you?
What that the sellers don't do anything that they say to do?
That the listing agent they do all that work to get the listing, but then there's not work to actually sell the listing. So they're not.
Like your neighbor, your neighbor, for instance.
Like my neighbor.
Okay, all right.
I always go back to real estate agents. Like we wear many hats, right? And one of the hats is lead generation. And agents they will work really hard for lead generation. And then once they get that listing, they got the listing and they list it. And then it's like, what's next? What's next, right? And the agents have been so used to it. We have a lot of agents who got in the business during that time too, where it was easy just to list it and then it would sell itself. So now it's about the agent getting creative, the agent going above and beyond. The agent's job really doesn't start until after they get that listing.
After it's on the market. And really, honestly, you need to have that avatar that you're selling to, because every listing is specific to a client, that a future buyer or whatnot. So getting the listing isn't doing your job. Selling the listing is doing your job. Getting the listing is awesome. Good job. They picked you out of whoever knows how many people. But unless you sell it, you are not even remotely done. And then here's the other thing. Once you go under contract, you're not even close to done, because then you have so many other things to kind of hurdle over, right? And that's a whole other deal. But really, it is about getting the word out. I mean, you are essentially a marketing mama or marketing man. That's what we do. That's our number one job in real estate, is marketing the property, marketing ourselves. That's how we get all of the business. That's how we feed our kids. That's how we keep our lights on. And so if you're not marketing the properties and marketing what you're doing, you're not really doing it, right? You're just hoping and praying. And that's not a really good strategy for really getting out there, right?
Although I've heard a lot of agents now, they're burying St. Joseph. So they're doing the hope and pray.
Okay, I love this. This is from you, the manifestation mama. Okay, so what do you always say about manifestation, which is amazing what you were able to manifest, by the way. Like, it's crazy awesome. It works.
Mean, it comes down to whatever you believe in, right? That you can make it a reality. And so if they believe in burying the St. Joseph is going to help them sell their home, bury the St. Joseph.
That's one part of it, right?
The
rest of it is actually doing the work to like get the word out and broadcasting what you're doing. And so that goes to, every week we give out a weekly, what do we call it? It's been a minute, you guys. A weekly to-go box. And so one of the things that I really think is super important right now is really combating that negative national news, because that does not apply to your specific local market. It doesn't even apply to, like you said, it's so freaking hyper local, like Volusia County versus one county over, Seminole County, entirely different stats. Volusia County versus Ocala, like totally different stats. Tony Tate, one of our favorite King of Soundbites, he was just telling me how in Ocala, like, you're basically looking at a lot of listings that are kind of a little bit higher than they should be. And so he's seeing a lot of them come down. Now, we're not seeing that here in Volusia County. We are holding basically steady to what our list price is. We're within, that 2% of list price. So long story short, you really, really do, as an agent, need to have tools that will help you combat the crazy that is this negative doom and gloom that is not applicable. Listen, I love data. Data is great, but data that is not specific to your market is really just a fear tactic. And then good for Nick. He's probably got like $1 jillion from all those clicks he's got, but it doesn't really put any money in your pocket as an agent. And honestly, it doesn't get that client, that buyer or seller, where they need to be in real estate, whatever their real estate journey is. And so today's weekly to-go box item is, what did I call it, Jenny?
I don't know. I got to look on my notes.
Oh, I think it was a mic drop, Marketing Mama's mic drop market update. And so it's a text script and an email script that says, hey, this is what's up. Let's talk about it. Because again, when you have a Twitter feud that is potentially going to cause world war, then you have this scare of tariffs, and then you have these rates. What are the rates going to drop? Why are we waiting? Guess what has happened since 2022? Prices have gone up. And so what you're doing, the math ain't mathin'. And so you have to really educate people on how they can be proactive about purchasing real estate, selling real estate, achieving their goals in real estate, because rates at 100% of renting, you're never going to build that generational wealth. And that's what you and I love about this, right, Kourtney? Like, I love real estate because I have seen it change the lives of so many of my clients over these past 20 plus years, because it really does. It gives them, it's almost like having a job that they don't ever have to work for, right? Like their equity position makes them able to buy a bigger and better house, and again and again and again, and it keeps on going. And so why would we ever miss out on that, right? Why would we ever miss out on that opportunity because we're listening to somebody that's got 300,000 clicks or likes tell us that the market is dropping? It's not. It's slowing down. It's breathing. It's normal. It's regular. It's really what it is it's ready for you to speak to a professional that knows what they're doing. And so hopefully the text script and that email script will help you at least get the conversation started and kind of go from there. Do you agree?
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, do you have a last bite that you want to talk about?
Done and done.
I know, right? Do you have a last bite that you want to give out to the crowd, to the agents?
Was that not the last bite?
I got a last bite.
Yes, Jenny, give us your last bite.
The market isn't slow. You are. You just have to sell.
Ooh, I like it. Mic drop. Boom.